Good afternoon, everybody. This is Drew Camp, Director of Government Relations and Business Retention and Expansion at the Ames Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Commission, coming to you for the March 30th, I believe it is, weekly legislative update. This is the conclusion of the 12th week of the state legislature, and they're still hoping to adjourn about April 17th, but a lot of work still remains to be done. This week we did see one big bill get signed into law by the governor. It's one that we've talked about for several weeks now. It's the Deappropriations Bill for fiscal year 2018. What the bill does that really impacts Ames and the Ames Chamber of Commerce is there's really three things I want to hit on. It takes $10 million away from the High Quality Jobs Program, our premier economic development program for state assistance for economic development projects. So basically that zeroes out our funding for the remainder of the fiscal year till July. But we have kind of been told that we should expect full funding coming in FY19, but we'll have to wait and see on that once we see the budget targets. And then it also takes $10 million away in a fund transfer from the Iowa Skilled Workforce and Jobs Creation Fund, and it also takes $10.9 million away from the Regent universities, and we have yet to see a confirmation as to how that will break down between the University of Iowa and Iowa State University. UNI will not be getting a cut at all on that $10.9 million because what was said is that they have more in-state students who therefore pay less money, so they don't have necessarily the financial wherewithal that the other two do to take a cut of that sort with only 3 months left in the current fiscal year. So that was signed into law by the governor on Wednesday. So now everyone's trying to figure out what they need to do to make sure that they can meet those demands of that bill. Dr. Winterstein has said, though, that they will really try to make sure that all cuts and deappropriations this fiscal year for the remainder of the school year will have the least impact on students, as you would expect. Another major issue that we continue to monitor is tax policy. That's still at a standstill. The House have yet to come out with their amendment that we've expected to see maybe this week, but it sounded like it's going to be early next week that we'll see the House amendment for tax reform, and it's likely, we're hoping, that it'll include corporate income tax reform as well. But the big thing is really identifying a pay for if you're going to have that in there, because that will obviously cost a little bit extra money, and we want to make sure that that's done in a fiscally responsible way. So that's one of the biggest things that we're really looking at, figuring out how that will be paid for via the amendment before it comes out. But also another big holdup is now that the deappropriation bill has come out, the budget targets for FY19 should be coming out soon as well. So they'll really try to merge the tax bill and the budget bills together and kind of have them combined, so to speak. So it will be very easy to hopefully move them forward as they move towards adjournment, because they do want to try to get out by mid-April if at all possible. Another big piece of legislation that moved forward out of subcommittee this week, yesterday morning, was out of the House Appropriations Committee. There's a TIF bill, a tax increment financing bill, that would remove the 540 school levy of TIF, but also about the 350 county levy. It would allow each to opt in, but as one of the lobbyists for the school board said, that they would be highly unlikely, the school districts that is, to opt in to their portion of a TIF if this bill was passed. So what the impact that would have is it would take about $890 per thousand in property tax valuation away from any urban renewal area agreement or TIF agreement, and that would have a huge impact because it would really debilitate the prospects of major projects. So think the Kingland project in Campustown, that would have been a big debilitating factor for that if those levies were not included in it as well, because it takes a lot of the increment that you would be able to gain from doing such a project by letting those two entities, the county and the school district, opt out. So that is something we continue to watch. One of the big things in that atmosphere, though, for the TIF bill is the fact that it's not out of Ways and Means, it's out of Appropriations. So what that really tells you is they're looking at using that as an appropriations or revenue mechanism, and what that also tells you is then they're looking at the TIF backfill of about $60 million per year to really try to get that back into the state coffers. So that's really why it's out of House Appropriations rather than out of House Ways and Means. It will still have to go to House Ways and Means, but they're looking at it as an appropriations bill because of the fact they want that $60 million in revenue going forward. So when we see the budget targets, which we hope for fiscal year 19, which will start July 1st, we really hope to kind of see then what the TIF backfill looks like, what the property tax backfill looks like, what the tax bill includes, what some of the costs are and what some of the pay-fors are for the tax bill, the Future Ready Iowa bill, some of the other bills that we've seen move forward this legislative session that cost money. We'll see if they do any appropriations for each of those, and it'll also kind of tell us what we can expect moving forward towards the end of session as far as conversations go about tax reform, tax increment financing, property tax backfill, some of our other major issues. That'll be a big thing to really see how those conversations will go until adjournment. So, as you can kind of tell, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be figured out here in the next week or couple weeks before the legislature adjourns. So we do expect next week to be a week where we'll see a lot of this stuff materialize, and that includes budget targets, which is going to be our biggest thing to see what we can expect moving forward in FY19, but then also the tax amendment out of the House Ways and Means Committee. That's another big thing we expect to see. And then also, once again, those budget targets will kind of tell us a little bit more about what we can expect for tax increment financing, Future Ready Iowa, property tax backfill, things along those trails and those paths as far as bills that we're monitoring. One final thing too is I wanted to say as well as SAVE, the Secure and Advanced Vision for Education. That bill is at the same place it was last week. It moved out of Senate Ways and Means last week, and there hasn't been any movement on that. But as far as we know, myself and our partners down at the Capitol, we have no reason to believe it won't move forward. It's just a matter of when that will be, especially since they're really focusing on tax and budget right now. So please make sure you do come back and watch next week's update, as it is sure to have quite a bit in it, including the budget targets and the amendment for hopefully corporate and individual tax reform out of the House. Thank you very much for watching, and have a very nice weekend.